Oh, you're very official on your Zoom name is Jacob Kent.
Oh no.
No, it's fine. Only I can really see it, but you're such a Jake to me because that's how I've always known you. And welcome to the fertility check. You
Thank you
changing
so
it?
much. I just changed
Hilarious.
it. It's officially changed.
I love it. Now I feel much more comfortable. How are you, Jake?
I'm doing great. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. We have found each other through this amazing community, and your story is so fascinating. You, at the time of recording, your product, which has been in development for quite a while, and we'll get there, is 1 week into its official launch. So that's very exciting. Why don't
It
you
is.
tell us about your product, and then let's work backwards on how this product came into fruition.
Yeah, that sounds great. So this product, which I feel strange even calling it a product, that seems I think disingenuous to kind of the heart and emotion that's behind all this.
Oh, I
But
love that. You're
D-
right.
Dandy offers two things at its core. We offer a line of physical products that we spent a couple of years developing, and we'll certainly talk more about the journey, but that we spent a couple of years developing to really support, the millions of people who are going through really difficult IVF injections, purpose-built products for the first time that help to make injections more comfortable, less painful, and also more intuitive, simplifying the injection protocol. And around our physical products, we've also built a digital health platform where we've built an amazing team of fertility nurses. We've gotten them licensed to provide care in all 50 states. And through this virtual care platform, for the first time, fertility patients are going to have on-demand access to medically credible professionals that can help them really at every moment of the journey, from the really early moments of navigating, maybe finding the right clinic and understanding your fertility outlook, and some of those really early informative moments where we know patients don't always have the right information to be empowered in those early stage decisions, all the way through, the really tough moments of injections and going through IVF and navigating your clinic. Our fertility nurses are here to guide you every step of the way with information that's not only personalized to you and your journey, which we know from Google and Reddit forums and Facebook groups you don't necessarily get, but information that's medically credible. And again, we've worked really, really hard to make these nurses available on demand, particularly in after hours where we know how difficult it could be to sometimes get in touch with your clinic. So we're really, really excited for Dandy to kind of sit at this intersection of physical products meets, digital virtual care. And through the combination of the two, we think we have a real opportunity to kind of transform the way patients are going through IVF to feel more supported, more reassured, and, more comfortable through this, very challenging process.
Love it. So I mentioned in the intro that it's rare to hear the man's voice in this well, certainly on my podcast, but that's because the men don't speak up as much, or I think it's actually out of respect. At least I think from my husband's perspective, when we were going through it, he was like, why am I going to answer a question when she's the one doing everything? But it is so important because there are men suffering through this. And I'm so grateful that there are men's voices out there like yours. So let's talk about how you ended up in this world because it's a little unconventional, I think.
It is unconventional. Am I the first male on the
You're not the
podcast, by the way?
first. You're not the first. My husband's been on a couple of times. We've had a couple fertility doctors on, and they've had a couple on, but you're certainly within a handful. So,
Got it.
yeah. But
Well, I
I
appreciate.
think also there's because of how you came to the community, it's a very, I just, well, you'll tell your story and I'll just say, like, I love that you are in this community because it's not because of what maybe people would assume how you got in, and we can get more into that. Why don't you tell us how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been, I think it's been very interesting from the perspective of both, building a business in this space, right? And being a founder and a CEO of a company that, frankly, I think typically would, the expectation would be most women's health companies, right, are led by, female founders, female CEOs. So I think the business dynamic of it, which we could talk more about, has been really interesting. But frankly, like in, just embracing vulnerability on a personal level, it's been a very, very interesting and at times hard journey, which I'm excited to share a little bit more with you about. But just rewinding, this all started about 3 years ago. I was living with a family member during COVID who was going through her own fertility struggles. She had spent too much time, like many patients that we've connected with, at the wrong clinic with the wrong doctors on the wrong protocols because, again, she didn't have that medically credible, personalized information earlier on in her journey. And so by the time she was now first getting up to IVF and approaching, her injection protocol, physically, mentally, emotionally, she had kind of already been through this life-altering struggle, and she was just yet now starting kind of the distressing experience of IVF. And because we were living in this very peculiar, window of COVID where we were living now together with our mutual in-laws, I kind of got this up close and personal view into this experience that you know, obviously so many people are going through, but it is very much kept behind closed doors, so much of the struggle. And frankly, if not for COVID, I probably never would have seen that. I would have been like the 99% of the population that has no real idea what this looks like for those that are impacted by it. And therein lies a lot of the problem, right? And so I was afforded this very rare moment in time to actually see and to an extent feel what she was going through. And I would, her burden was her burden. I would never say that I shared in that burden, but certainly in those close quarters, in that close proximity, you start to, I think, develop more understanding and empathy for what some of those struggles look like. And man, it was an eye-opening experience on a lot of levels. And so, we kind of started spending some time talking more and more about the experience, looking at, I think all the points along the journey where, on top of this already being such a difficult, distressing experience, like how isolating was it that there was such little support, and so many gaps in care. And, we started talking with just kind of peers in our network, right? Friends, family, coworkers, people that had maybe been through it that were talking about a little bit. And I think we were just like eager at first to understand other people's experiences. And what we started to realize after just a few months was that while certainly no two fertility journeys are the same, behind closed doors, people were going through quite similar pain points in terms of not feeling like they had access to the right information, finding navigating the clinic quite distressing at times. Certainly, the injection started to emerge as like the single most acute pain point, both physically and mentally and emotionally. So many women and patients describe this experience of injections being painful and confusing and piecing together versions of products that were designed for other experiences. And we just started to get really, really interested in, look, there was clearly a real problem here. While so much kind of money and innovation was going into the clinical side of expanding clinics and benefits coverage, like it didn't seem like anyone was really focused on taking care of the patient outside of the clinic. And so that was kind of the earliest kind of genesis of where this all started, how I got involved. And, from there, we kind of went into more formal research and development. And that's really when I had the opportunity to start to connect with hundreds of patients and hear hundreds of stories. And when we started to get really, a lot more serious about the opportunity to start to develop solutions, to make this a more comfortable journey.
Okay, so I just want to set the scene again for people. You're moved in with your in-laws during COVID, you and your wife and your siblings and or who are partners and your in-laws, like the six of you are in a house together. And one of the
Exactly.
women is going through IVF. Like, I don't know if that's the best timing for her or the absolute worst timing for her. Obviously, it turned out, in the grand scheme to be okay, but I cannot even imagine the daily grief of having to do this process with your whole family in the house?
Yeah, it was extraordinarily it was strange times. I mean, there's no better way to put it. COVID obviously already brought a layer of just kind of strangeness, right, to life. And here you are with, again, this incredibly vulnerable and intimate experience, which is so often really just happening behind closed doors. And now in these tight COVID quarters, we're, to an extent going through it together. But if there's a silver lining to it all, right, it was this moment. And going back to me as a male, who didn't firsthand experience this, there was this silver lining of, oh my God, there is an opportunity to create more awareness and to bring more voices into the conversation. And had that experience not happened, I certainly probably never would have been involved in any of this. I'd be walking around like most people, uneducated about what this problem really looks like, the very deep ways that, people are being impacted. And again, to me, like therein lies the problem. Like without the knowledge, without the understanding, without the visibility of what this all really looks like, it's really hard to create change. It's really hard to, really change the way that people are going through this experience. And so, for me, and again, we could talk a little bit more about like the personal side of what it's all felt like
Yeah.
for me as a male building in a space for, a problem that is so female dominated. Um, but at my core, what I've always come back to is just the importance of, advocating for problems that maybe you yourself didn't go through, but without that, it feels like it's really hard to expand the conversation and bring more voices into the conversation. Without that, change can sometimes be really difficult. So it was, yeah, it was a unique experience, but led to some, I think, to some amazing opportunities to create real change in the space.
I think it requires a certain amount of empathy as well, which your sister-in-law is very lucky that you happen to have had, I don't know that it's not easy a lot of times, and not just for men, but for people to, like you said, to understand a situation without having gone through it themselves, unless you really have an open, empathetic heart. So that was quite handy for this. Remind me what your background was before this venture.
So I started my career in hospitality. I worked
Hmm.
for a few different hotel groups, and it's interesting because people sometimes ask me like, "What's the tie back?" And I spent the earliest parts of my career working under a mentor who, we were designing and developing really amazing restaurants and hotels and food and beverage experiences. And he was like this creative mastermind that I really looked up to, and he impressed upon me really early in my career the opportunity that we have to connect with humans and move humans by curating and improving upon like physical experiences, right? And his point of view was always like, if you can create an experience or improve an experience that really connects with someone, on a deep level, you have the opportunity to connect with them in such a deep and meaningful way. And so, I've gone throughout a lot of my career. I eventually was an early employee at WeWork and spent about 5 or 6 years building different businesses there. But I think the through line to a lot of what I've done in my career has really been looking at the world through the lens of experience, both like really admiring well-designed experiences, but also I think having a very keen eye for really poorly designed experiences that people are going through. And so again, when I, kind of got that up close and personal look at what this experience looked like, I guess I couldn't really think of many experiences, right, that were more fitting of opportunities to be improved. So, experience and really the power of experiences has been a really big part of my career.
So relevant. I mean, they definitely tie back. I have such a bizarre background as well, but it all feels like, I went to drama school, I was pre-law, I've done marketing, but in each of those, like the goal for me is make a person feel heard, seen, and healed. And so it doesn't matter how we get there, but that's still what the heart of my soul wants to do. And so it all comes sort of together with that. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about the name of your company, which you taught me a lot about. Tell me how you got to the name, but also the significance of it, because it's really beautiful.
Yeah, so when we were thinking about building Dandy, which wasn't called Dandy at the time, again, I mean, we were focused on physical products, we were focused on a virtual care platform, but I think more than thinking about the offering itself, like the products or the services, we were really thinking more deeply around like how do we build a brand? And you just kind of said this yourself, Abby, that people can feel seen and heard in, right? I think so much of the pain and isolation of fertility struggles and a lot of other things in life, right, is this idea of not feeling seen and not feeling heard. And that in and of itself can create, I think, deep suffering for a lot of people. And we brought on an amazing brand development team. We brought on a research team that helped us to go pretty deep with, we had a broader research group, about 150 patients, but there was 12 of them that elected to go into like really deep insights with us. And they kind of opened up their kind of deepest and darkest moments and their most vulnerable, experiences for us to get a really deep look at, what were the hardest things that they were really experiencing. Because to us, I think a brand is so much more than colors and words and logos. I think it's about how you make people feel and how you could show up to support them through the really tough moments. And without understanding what those toughest moments really look like, it's hard to do that. And so we spent a full year thinking about Dandy as something that could show up for women to feel seen and heard in. And from those insights, Abby, like at the deepest levels, what we kind of were hearing time and time again was that fertility patients, like the singular most difficult part, it seemed for many, was the uncertainty and the focus on this endpoint, right? Which the endpoint is, of course, trying to get pregnant. Makes perfect sense. And so the fixation on that made a lot of sense. But what we observed from talking to a lot of these, amazing, strong and resilient people was that they were overlooking the growth and the transformation and the resilience that was being forged on the journey to get to that endpoint. And so as we thought about building a brand, of course, we were thinking about a lot of ways we could show up for them, but we kind of asked ourselves the question, like on a deeper, more emotional level, how can we really support patients to maybe shift a little bit of the way that they experienced this journey? And one of the big opportunities we felt like we maybe had was to subtly and gently and lovingly point out that as hard as this journey is, and as much sense as it makes to fixate on that endpoint of getting pregnant, like you are growing on the journey to get there. You are transforming, you are becoming stronger. And I think in, any of life's difficult moments, right, that growth that is being forged is important to acknowledge. And so we then really got fixated on looking out at nature and looking at all these different things in nature that were kind of growing at their own pace, and the fact that growth isn't always a straight line up, and growth does sometimes come along with tough moments of contraction. And we kind of stumbled upon the dandelion flower, and the dandelion goes on this magnificent journey of growth and transformation. It starts at this beautiful little bud, and then it turns into the yellow, beautiful dandelion that most people know of. But what a lot of people don't realize is it then kind of goes through this season of contraction where it closes back up, and then it finally reemerges as the kind of white puffball that a lot of people don't realize is the same flower as the original yellow dandelion. And though that white puffball that people could probably see in their mind's eye is actually thousands and thousands of little seedlings that get carried by the wind. And it's really beautiful. These seedlings, the dandelion kind of surrenders itself to nature. Those seedlings, by the way, can get carried up to 25 miles. They have no idea where they're going to end up, but they eventually reconnect with new land, new earth, and plant new life. And we just kind of fell in love with the life cycle of the dandelion as this beautiful kind of story of uncertainty, but embracing the uncertain growth and the transformation. And we thought it was just this really beautiful analogy to the fertility journey. So as you could tell by how much time I've spent answering the question, like how we developed the
It's so
brand,
good though. It's so
we're
good.
passionate about it, and we do hope that in all those moments of in between, that Dandy can be a reminder to women that even in the toughest moments, like you are growing, you are transforming. And I think there's a lot of strength in knowing that. So
Mm.
that's our hope for the brand.
Wow. Let's talk a little about the actual physical part of the product. Because like let's talk about the features that it comes with. So let's go through like the actual injection piece of the pie, and how your company has taken that piece on.
Yeah, so again, this was all really first and foremost informed by, insights and a lot of research we did with a lot of patients. So when we became really clear that, injections themselves were one of the biggest pain points, we spent about 6 months, not just with patients, but actually brought on, two leading fertility doctors here in New York, some amazing registered nurses and nurse practitioners, to get a well-rounded view of the injection experience itself. And in working with, this group, particularly the patients, we kind of distilled the IVF injection process down to like 5 or 6 of the biggest pain points, right? That everyone was kind of talking about. Obviously, there was just the pain of injections themselves. But beyond that, there was a few other themes that emerged, right? It was everything from certain injections, such as the progesterone injections, have a fairly low margin for error in terms of injecting yourself in the wrong place. And, a lot of patients describe the uncertainty, am I injecting myself in the right place? We looked at what a lot of clinics were doing, which was taking Sharpie markers and drawing on patients' bodies with, by the
Kind
way,
of feels like hazing at a fraternity or for sorority, where you like
it
circle
speaks
your
to,
fat, you know?
it's crazy, right? And
Yeah.
and we stepped back in these moments and we're like, oh my God, how low is the standard for care?
Well,
Like
and like,
clinic.
sorry, I just cut you off because you were just going to say that the toxicity within a Sharpie put on your tuchus area is not healthy for a fertility patient.
And these are the clinics. These are the
Right.
medical practitioners that are doing this. They're putting toxic chemicals, and it's like, aren't you the one that's supposed to be telling me not to put a toxic
Right.
chemical on my body as I'm trying to get pregnant, by the way? But like, it just those are the moments that we kept like stepping back and just saying, "Oh my God, the standard for care is so low. How is there not anything better?" So the whole, toxic Sharpie markers and drawing on women's bodies to indicate injection site again was one moment we said we could come up with something better here. There's a better way to help patients, in a more intuitive and uplifting way, understand how to inject themselves. So that was one pain point. Progesterone itself comes with several pain points, right? Like I don't need to tell you, but the knotting and clumping under the skin is a pain point. A lot of women describe using like sports massage rollers to kind of rub it out, but complained about the fact like, why am I using this big long roller that was designed for athletes? This doesn't particularly feel like this was designed for this experience. Um, and another thing around progesterone was, heating the progesterone before injections, right? Most patients described, hey, my clinic, my nurse, my doctor's telling me to warm my progesterone to thin out the viscosity of it prior to injecting. But they're telling me to put this vial in my armpit or in my bra or drop it in a warm glass of water. And now I'm pulling out like a vial out of water. It's dripping wet. Like going back to experience and, thinking back to like my earliest days of hospitality, Abby, like I looked at this, this is crazy. Like this is such a poor user experience that we're burdening people that are already going through the most intense underlying distressing experiences. Like, how is this what is being asked of them as they go through the IVF protocol? And then another big thing was like both, heat therapy, right? Whether, women were heating their skin post progesterone injection or, post egg retrieval, wearing a heating pad across the abdomen to support some of the discomfort post egg retrieval. A lot of women just kind of described like having to plug this like clunky heating pad into the wall, and now I'm bedridden or couch ridden because I can't really move because I'm stuck to a plug. And then similarly, even numbing the skin prior to injection was a similar theme. Like I have to sit there holding an ice pack to my skin. So now I don't have use of my hands and I can't really like do anything else. So this interesting theme of like mobility emerged, and how could we create heat therapy, numbing therapy, and some other ancillary products that prioritize mobility. So you as a woman who might have your another kid at home and needs to get dinner on the table, or might need to tend to your job and send some emails, or maybe you need to be in the car, or maybe you need to be sitting at work. We wanted to design something that was not only purpose built, but allowed for mobility for you to go on with your life in a way that was hands free, that could be worn in a discreet way under the clothes. So those were a lot of the pain points that became really clear. And what we ultimately designed, Abby, spent a full year working with amazing product designers. We worked with a design studio out of San Francisco called Level. They've designed some of the most beloved consumer products like the Fitbit and the Tempo workout studio. And it's like an all-female design studio brought a tremendous amount of empathy from a design perspective into the problems that we were trying to solve. We had a couple other amazing product experts involved, and what we landed on after, months and months of kind of considering different routes we could go was this really comfortable compression belt system, which kind of sits at the core of the IVF Care Kit, where essentially it becomes a wearable belt. It's very, very comfortable, premium materials, designed to be worn on a variety of kind of shapes and sizes of body. And it comes with a clip-in window. And what that window allows you to do is actually clip in various components that allow a lot of the therapies that we just discussed to be hands-free. So now there's a really beautiful, more premium cooling pad that you pull out of the freezer, and instead of sitting there holding it to your stomach, you actually clip it into the belt. And now if you want to numb your skin for 5, 10, 15 minutes before your injections, you pop it into the belt, and you can move around and do what you need to do in those moments while you're numbing your skin. Similarly, we designed a pretty innovative heating pad. It's about 4 inches by 6 inches. It's less than 2 millimeters thick, so it's very, very sleek and thin. And most importantly, it's battery operated. You charge it with what you charge your iPhone with, a USB-C cable. So really, for one of the first times, you have a heating pad that you don't have to plug into the wall. So same idea, you can clip that heating pad into the window. And whether you're looking for heat therapy, again, post-egg retrieval to support some of the discomfort, post-progesterone injections, this heating pad can be worn, on your front side, on your back side, and you can move around and take it on the go. And we've already had, outreach from some of the earliest patients that have been using this product. Send those pictures of them like out at dinner, wearing this belt under their clothes, enjoying heat therapy on the go. A couple of them have used it at work, and it's just kind of reconsidered the way patients go about heating and cooling therapy. And then we've, outside the belt and heating and cooling, we've developed 2 other, products. One is a massage ball that's just more ergonomical and built for this experience to help rub out some of the tenderness and nodding from the progesterone. And then we've also developed non-toxic shot target tattoos, which are essentially semi-permanent tattoos, but all clean ingredients. We're actually going to be gifting those to clinics around the country. And those are going to start to show up to replace Sharpie markers and help to make sure that you actually know where you're injecting yourself.
I love that piece of the pie. It's just so innovative. So smart, so smart. It's going to help so many women too, because if you shower and some of the Sharpie comes off and you're like, is it this big or is it this big? It's very traumatic because, like you said, you want to make sure you're doing it exactly right.
Exactly. And that's where, frankly, that we also hope the virtual care can come into play, because the physical products,
right,
I think, are going to go a long way to again, being purpose built. So they're actually guiding you through very specific steps of the process. They will absolutely help to reduce some of the discomfort and pain of the process. But I think a big thing we heard, Abby, from so many patients was also this idea of like the emotional uncertainty. Like it's really uncomfortable to not necessarily know if I'm injecting myself properly, or even worse, if I unfortunately did something wrong. We've spoken to multiple patients that, I don't know, a few patients we spoke to, for their progesterone injections, didn't inject themselves in the right place and actually hit a nerve and, got nerve damage.
Which is really common, really common.
We've spoken to multiple patients, by the way, Abby, that for the first night of injections injected themselves with their mixing needle.
Yeah.
And it's like you step back and you look and you say, this is completely solvable, right? This is not a problem that is unsolvable. It's just clearly patients don't have the right level of support and education in a way that's personalized and is meeting them in the moment when they need it. It's one thing for, a clinic or a pharmacy to give you a video to watch, and you watch it weeks in advance, and speaking to a lot of patients, by the time they get up to injections, they don't really remember what they learned in the first place. But the other big thing we heard was like the videos, right? They're one-way information, right?
Yes.
So when I have a question, I don't really get to ask it because it's a one-way video.
Or you just post a comment on YouTube and hope that maybe somebody sees it,
But who's responding to it,
Of course,
right? It's
right.
even a medically credible resource. Is that someone I could trust? And therein lies a lot, some of the problems. So the whole idea of the virtual care platform is that, as you get these physical products and now you have something physically that hopefully helps to create some comfort and maybe even help you to create a little bit of, an empowering self-care ritual around this injection process. There's a really nice QR code in the box you could scan that takes you right to, kind of a digital experience where you could watch how-to videos on how to use these products in the injection protocols. But in 2 minutes, you can also book a live nurse. You can literally, we spent a lot of time building this really beautiful booking platform where you could say, hey, I'm starting my injections Thursday night. I'm in Washington, I'm in California, I'm in New York. Uh, and we'll show you the nurses who are licensed to provide care at those times in your location. And then, you could even watch videos to get a personal feel of who they are and kind of get a little bit of a personal feel about what you might get from interacting with that nurse. And in just a few minutes, you can book a live session. So now you have injection support that is two-way, right? Where you're actually speaking to a nurse and they're answering the questions that are specific to you. And we're focused both on like med teach and medication unboxing leading up to injections because we know, a lot of patients are getting their meds and it's this big box and it's confusing what's in it, what gets stored where, what gets mixed, so we want to solve for that window leading up to injections where hopefully patients feel a little bit more empowered that they know what they're doing leading up to the first night. And then, we're also supporting through that live care, like night of real-time injection, someone that's walking you through it. And by the way, we've done some early sessions with
Hmm.
partners, right? Where it's the partner that's doing the
Yes.
injecting, and sometimes they're even more anxious.
Right.
So we're
Which
really
is why
excited.
my partner did not do any of mine because the nerve level for like it's just, I'm shocked when I learn how many partners do the shots because first of all, I'm way too much of a control freak, but also the level of nervousness that I would have if I'm fucking it up on my partner versus myself is like 20 times higher, you know?
I have so much respect for both sides of it.
Yeah.
For women, I say, I still just, every day I'm watching videos and trying to continue to learn and just hear more patient stories. And I just it never loses its effect on me watching women inject themselves. It's just I don't think I could do it. Like the psychology of
The
injecting your
psychology. Yeah.
it's
But
it
the first time the psychology is insane. And then once you do it, I think there's an invincibility of like, I can do anything. At least there was for me. I probably talked myself off a ledge for 20 minutes before I could do that first one, you know.
Well, I'm curious your perspective. I want to ask you a question because
Yeah.
we've heard this like kind of going both ways, and maybe this question's about injections, but maybe it's just more broadly around the various difficult parts of the broader fertility journey. But it's interesting. We've heard kind of sentiment that speaks to what you just mentioned, which is the second time I went through it, it was easier, right? I had broken through maybe some of that, the early fears and uncertainties, and now I'm a little bit more of a pro, so the whole thing becomes easier. But it's interesting. We've also heard from a lot of patients that going through it the second time, and again, I'm not just speaking about injections, but more broadly, there's a lot more I know now about some of the really hard parts of the journey. And because I now know that, I'm more anxious to go through it the second time.
Mm.
And I'm just curious your perspective maybe on your experience or what you see from some of the patients work with, how you kind of feel about that dichotomy of like the
Yeah.
first time what you don't know versus, the second time you're a little bit more educated.
For me personally, I'm a very experiential person. So once I and visual. So once I see the physical process and experience what it's like to go through it, it's much easier for me to do again or to replicate the experience. Emotionally is another story. But I do also within my patients and clients, see it both ways as well. And some people, it never gets easier, and some people never gets harder. It's the same. I think like you said, in general in life, like living in the unknown is the hardest part. So while you don't know what the outcome will be, having the knowledge of what will happen to your body physically from what you're doing, or a little more knowledge, made me at least feel much more in control than the first time when I had no clue and felt like I was living every aspect of it in the unknown, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, no, great
And
insight.
really, I think if, my mom's a psychologist. So if I were to like zoom out on this, I'm guessing the approach that people have is in this part of the journey is would mirror other pieces of their life and the way that they approach things, not just injections or IVF, but I think some people approach things the second time feeling more confident, and some people approach things the second time with a lot more trepidation, and that's a universal feeling for them, you
Yeah,
know?
agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you invented this company, created this company. It was, I know, a team effort. I like to ask people of a phrase or a cliche or a piece of advice maybe someone gave you or that you like to give that you think about often.
If I had to lean into one, because it's very alive kind of in my world right now, and I do think there's certainly tiebacks to kind of the fertility journey. I think it's trying to lean into uncertainty as much as possible. Um, not to say that the journey to build a startup is at all the same as the journey through fertility struggles, but the general theme, of uncertainty in life in general, I think is very, very, very uncomfortable for most people. I know for me, like as a type A controlling person, like uncertainty is I really don't do well with uncertain outcomes. And look, building this startup like over the last few years, the proposition of building a startup is kind of like as uncertain as it could be, right? It brings uncertainty on like, is this company going to succeed? Financially, am I going to be okay? Or are we going to hit the milestones we need to hit? It's wrought with uncertainty. And for me, that's been really, really difficult at times. And so I, in my own personal journey, have really, through a variety of practices, tried to work through that uncertainty, tried to embrace that uncertainty. And I think, again, there's a lot of kind of growth that can be realized from trying to embrace the uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it may be. And, so when I look, and tie it back to the struggles that, a lot of fertility patients are going through, and I don't at all want this to sound like toxic positivity at all. I try to be very, very sensitive in when I speak about things like this. But I would just say that, even in really, really small moments, really small doses, 30, 60 seconds at a time, trying to lean into the uncertainty and kind of let go and knowing that sometimes it's okay to not fully be in control, and that could suck and feel terrible. But I do think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of grow through that, even if in really small doses. So that's just one thing that comes to mind because
I
it's
love
it's
that
like,
one. I
yeah, it's
love that
very personal
one.
to me right now.
Well, we will link out to Dandi Fertility so everybody can check out this platform. And I thank you so much for honestly connecting in general and for being here.
Thank you, Abby, for being a part of our journey, and to all the women and patients out there that have allowed us into their journeys and been so pivotal into helping us to build over the last few years. So yeah,
Love it.
thank you.